Have you ever noticed yourself dating the same kind of partner over and over again, even though you swore you never go back to that type of relationship? Or maybe you keep ending up in friendships where you feel used, or in jobs where you're not appreciated. In my work with people caught in these patterns, I often see it extend into even more destructive behaviors. Maybe you keep slipping back into drugs or drinking, returning to prostitution, clashing with supervisors, repeating affairs, lying, or covering things up. Hello everyone, welcome to the Narcissism Decoder. I'm Dr. Anthony Mazzella. In this video, we're going to explore why do you, or someone you might know, keep repeating painful patterns even when it leads to misery and suffering. In psychodynamic theory, this is what we call the repetition compulsion. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The repetition compulsion, or we also call it the compulsion to repeat, is a very complicated concept with a long history in psychoanalysis. Sigmund Freud first introduced it when he noticed patients reenacting painful experiences instead of simply remembering and reflecting on them. Since then, it's been debated, expanded, and reinterpreted for more than a century. Over time, the idea has moved beyond Freud's original observations. Today, however, most people use this concept in a much simpler way, as a description of how we unconsciously repeat old relational patterns, even when those patterns bring pain. It's not that this definition is inaccurate. In psychoanalytic theory, the repetition compulsion is often defined as our unconscious drive to repeat early painful experiences, usually with the hope that this time it will turn out differently. That's the most common way it's understood today. It's a helpful starting point. But if we stop there, we miss something very essential. Without a deeper understanding of why we repeat, we're left with only one explanation of this highly complicated and complex dynamic. And if we have only a surface level explanation, guess what might happen? You're more vulnerable to falling into the same destructive patterns again and again. So, the goal of this video is to give you a deeper and more comprehensive understanding of why you might be repeating destructive patterns, particularly when it comes to narcissism. So, why does having a more comprehensive or deeper understanding of why you might repeat destructive patterns even matter? Let me respond to that question with a prototypical example that I often encounter in my psychodynamic work with these individuals. Someone who grew up with a narcissistically preoccupied, or we could say critical parent, may later find themselves drawn to partners who are emotionally unattuned or judgmental. On the surface, it makes no sense. Why would you seek out and feel hurt again, like you've already dealt with this before? One reasonable explanation is that if we think about this unconsciously, that's the word I used earlier, that there's a hope. The inner logic may look something like this. If I can finally make this person love and accept me, I will feel seen, good, alive, and maybe I'll heal that wound from my past. In other words, this comes from unresolved trauma and unmet needs in childhood. The child couldn't change the parent or escape the situation. So as an adult, the psyche tries again and again, replaying the scenario in different forms, hoping and waiting for a different, more fulfilling outcome. Let's go a little deeper, because the repetition compulsion is not just about getting stuck in old patterns or insecure love and attachments. At its core, it raises a more unsettling question. Why is that when you finally get something good, a healthy relationship, a promotion at work, you stop drinking, or you give up seeking out prostitutes, you suddenly sabotage it by slipping into some behavior that is equally destructive. Maybe you slip into being deceptive, lying, or even stealing. Why is it that some people, no matter how much pain an experience brings, seem unable to learn from it? Okay, so we're diving a little deeper now. Let's ask ourselves what unconscious bargain is being made when you destroy what you have just won. Which unbearable feeling? Envy? Shame? Unworthiness? Fear of intimacy? I don't know, you see, because that's the whole point, is it gets covered up. So we don't know what you're avoiding by recreating the familiar pain. In my work, I've been struck by how certain patients seem committed to repeating outcomes that led only to unhappiness and suffering. Psychoanalyst, this is a famous, renowned psychoanalyst, John Steiner, described this as a form of resistance to change. That's what he called it. For Steiner, the self-sabotage can be understood as an unyielding resistance, a kind of psychic refusal. This refusal arises from, and I quote, a hatred and intolerance of anything new. Emphasis is on anything new, and especially of anything creative or life-giving, like that promotion at work or that intimate relationship that could really lead to growth. Steiner and other analysts link this intolerance to the operation of envy. In other words, when someone encounters something new that might actually help, a creative idea, a nourishing relationship, even a moment of genuine insight from a loved one, envy can twist it into something unbearable. It's not just that you can't take it in. You must attack, devalue, and destroy this good thing in your life. For example, when someone is trying to help you think through a difficult problem, you may find that you can't hear them at all. You might dismiss what they're offering, or you may even interrupt them before they finish their sentence, blocking their input entirely. Can you imagine this? What looks like a stubborn refusal to grow may actually be a deep struggle with what it means to receive goodness. When we think more deeply about why we repeat destructive patterns, it's important to notice that change often requires letting in something new, something enriching, maybe even something life-changing. But for someone who's struggling with narcissistic disturbances, the very experience of receiving goodness can feel unbearable. And that raises yet another question. Why would goodness feel so dangerous? Why does receiving, or even just thinking about a loved one's opinion, a hug, nurturance, or something as simple as enjoying your favorite dessert that your partner made for you feel so threatening? Sometimes it's because accepting goodness means acknowledging a need. It means admitting that you could be dependent, vulnerable, or incomplete. And for someone who has felt shamed, neglected, or humiliated in those states, that's in states of need, the experience of being helped doesn't feel safe. It feels threatening. If we step back and look at the earliest origins of receiving goodness, let's consider how our first experiences of care and nourishment can create the foundation for growth, or, when marked by humiliation and shame, can make goodness feel itself like a danger. But what happens when being cared for, instead of feeling safe, we're suddenly made to feel exposed, or too dependent, too needy, or weak because we have a need? And you hear this all the time. You know, a kid falls down and scratches his knee, and a parent may respond, "Stop crying. It's not so bad." But that's something we need to think about a bit more. As always, there's still so much more to say about this, But we have to stop here. I know we're right in the middle of it. But if this spoke to you and you're curious to learn more about all issues related to narcissism or to this destructive pattern, please support the show by subscribing so you don't miss what's coming next, which will be part 2. That's what's next. Hopefully I'll see you there.